Welcome to Talk to Me Tuesday on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Madi B. Welcome back to our fourth episode of the sexual abuse series. We are on the episode 4, which is types of cases. Today, we will uncover these types of cases, general details, and make you aware of what is happening in our communities. Last month, we spoke with Attorney Rochelle Guiton and the sexual abuse team as we defined everyone's role and what they do for our sexual abuse survivors. Sexual abuse and human trafficking attorney Rochelle Guiton is with us again today to continue on this important subject matter. I want to welcome you to the show, Attorney Rochelle Guiton.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It is such a pleasure to have you, and we're going to definitely uncover a different topic this time. But before we do that, I want to open up those lines of communication as we encourage you to share your story, your experience, if you want to know more or just help someone you know. Attorney Rochelle Guiton, let's start off with you telling us a little bit about your background in sexual abuse and how you have created an impact on multiple case types so far this year.
Absolutely, sure. And I've enjoyed the shows that we've done, and it's been my pleasure to just, do my part in educating the community. Definitely, it's something that I've taken a lot of pride in my past work as well as my current work. And so prior to working with D. Miller and Associates, as you already know, Monty, I was a prosecutor with the District Attorney's Office in Montgomery County, Texas, for just almost 10 years. And I would say probably the bulk of my work and the work that I'm most proud of there was working in sexual abuse cases.
Yeah. And with that, I know we're definitely going to make a difference, not just in this episode, but also past episodes. I definitely recommend that you go watch episode 1 through today, which is 4. So that way you can uncover. We talked a lot about sexual abuse, human trafficking. What is it? How do you get help? Meeting our team. And now we're uncovering case types. So with this series, we hope that we can educate and answer any questions that you may have throughout the show. This episode will solely focus on types of cases. So tell our viewers, Attorney Rochelle, what kind of sexual abuse cases have you done in or have you had experience in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, working with the district attorney's office, all of my work was criminal. I was a prosecutor, and I represented the state of Texas. And so a complainant or survivor in the case of a sexual abuse case would report to the police. And then the police would then follow up and file their cases with the district attorney's office. And so that would be how I received cases. Currently, now being a civil attorney, I still work on sexual abuse cases, but we have several different types of cases. We work a lot of institutional sexual abuse, collegiate sexual abuse, Boy Scouts of America. We have general sexual abuse docket. We have an Uber docket, clergy docket, lots of different case types. And really just excited that we are, working on so many different cases and hopefully making an impact on those that are affected.
Yeah. And so you just mentioned a lot of great things. So now you're on the civil side. And wow, let's just start off by saying that's a lot of cases. And I sadly say that with a very humble heart because there's just so much sexual abuse out there. This is crazy. So I really want to talk about each one with as much detail as you can give us, Attorney Rochelle Guiton, and what you could provide to our community that are in probably similar situations. So let's first uncover, because I know you named a few, and I just want to go through each single one. So tell us about institutional sexual abuse case. Give me let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could just bring this to light as well, that's really important. I think that the times has changed so drastically, right? And so here we are in 2020, and I am so excited that a lot of survivors are coming forward. And it just seems that sexual abuse is rampant in our country, right? And I just think that our times have changed. And I hope that people will continue to speak out about abuse. And we've got so many different ways that we're finding out about it. And so I want to applaud people for coming forward, survivors for coming forward, having the courage, and it certainly, is, I think, a dynamic time right now to just come out and start talking about what's happening across our country and all over the world. But to kind of bring it back home, where you mentioned institutional abuse, is basically people who are in positions of power that work for institutions. And that can be for any kind of institution. It could be for a commercial platform. They have an employer that is sexually abusing an employee. It could be within a school. It could be within a church. And it's sort of an umbrella that overarches all different types of sexual abuse within institutions. And of course, our firm works lots of different types underneath that umbrella.
Wow. Okay. So I know you kind of uncovered that you applaud our survivors for speaking, and I definitely agree. And now we're kind of talking about institutional sexual abuse. Can you talk a little bit of maybe scenarios that you've either seen in general of what exactly has happened, just in case we're talking to someone right now in their homes that may be, a little bit confused on how to recognize if this is institutional or maybe a different category. Give us a little bit of some examples that you can probably highlight.
Sure. And we'll go into detail of each, different one throughout the show, but certainly definitely things that that you've seen on television, unfortunately, things that we're seeing day to day, where you're going to have platforms like the University of Southern California. We have cases of that nature in which someone in a position of power, and like that case, the doctor at that particular school was sexually abusing women that went to seek services there. So any kind of scenario in which someone is in a position of power or authority, and they are doing some form of abuse towards those persons that they interact with, and would consider it happening as a part of their job, that it's kind of mixed in with the business of their job. And like you said, it's everywhere, and it's so, it can kind of be depressing, right? Like hearing all of this and listening to all of this. Unfortunately, it does happen on several different platforms, but yeah.
And we're going to kind of uncover, I know you just mentioned the collegiate, so I definitely am going to dive into that in 1 second. But for those people that are watching that may not be able to recognize, like, is this just physical abuse? Is it, excuse me, let me correct that, physical sexual abuse, or is it verbal sexual abuse? Because some people may be in a situation and they're playing with their mind, like, is this that category? Is it not? How can someone recognize that behavior that, hey, this is not right, and this is categorized under an institutional, what have you, sexual abuse?
Okay, so when you're talking about sexual abuse, and I think we covered this on, I believe, our first show, when we talked about what that is and what it entails. But sexual abuse would generally entail some form of physical fondling, touching, penetration of the genitalia. If kids are listening, just kind of beware that I will be using words like that. But some form of physical touching. When you say physical abuse, now, of course, that could be a different kind of case. And we also handle cases of physical abuse. We have a docket right now for the Glen Mills School. And those are physical abuse cases in which someone physically harms someone outside of, sexual abuse, or any kind of like what would have seemed like an intimate situation. And so, yeah, it very much is distinguished. When you start talking about verbal abuse, I certainly would want to know more details about that to see if we can help that particular survivor. But absolutely, there are forms of harassment and violent language that would be harmful to someone's mental or emotional health.
Okay, so you gave a lot of great examples, and I definitely want to go ahead and dive deeper into certain refined categories, right? Now, let's talk a little bit. You mentioned a little while ago collegiate sexual abuse. Tell us a little bit about this case type.
So, collegiate sexual abuse generally be where there is some sort of sexual abuse within a school system or university. And I did mention that we have the University of Southern California. We have a women's and a men's docket that we cover there of individuals who were sexually abused, seeing doctors that they trusted at the university. So that would be probably the biggest example that I have of that type of case. But it could be at any university, at any collegiate level, where sexual abuse happens. Again, with a person in a position of authority, someone employed by that particular university. So if you're in a situation where a professor, a teacher, an administrator of some sort at the school, at the university that you're attending has sexually abused you, there is help for you out there. And I certainly would encourage anybody to come forward.
So you talked a little bit about this behavior. So what colleges have you seen, Attorney Rochelle, that have had some of this behavior come to the forefront? You mentioned one, USC, which is University of Southern California. Has there been other colleges?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that this is USC is probably one of the bigger cases that this has happened. But there's been Michigan State, there has been OSU, there are other universities. Um, and like I said, this it seems like it's so rampant, but I think there's just this like power of survivors that are coming forward, and yeah, I mean, it unfortunately it happens, and it's the worst time for survivors to be taken advantage of. You're new to a school, you're just barely becoming an adult. I think that it's an extremely vulnerable time for someone to be put in a position with someone that they most likely trust and then be taken advantage of. So, I definitely, even would encourage parents to start talking to their teenagers going into college and talking to them about things like this that happen when they're in college. It is an environment that's also conducive to secrets and shaming and not wanting to tell what happens, not wanting to report what happens. And so then, unfortunately, we do wind up with cases like that of the University of Southern California, where years have gone by, where reporting may not have been as encouraged as it should have been.
Now, I know you just mentioned a few. That doesn't mean that there won't be any other colleges, right, that come on the forefront here in the future. So definitely, I think you said a great point, is educating the parents to start talking to their kids that are going to college, that are in college. All of that is just kind of planting that seed to recognize some of this behavior. Now, can you tell us a little bit? Now, you named a few colleges, okay, and maybe you can and cannot, but could you tell us a little bit about what happened in these colleges of abuse of power?
Yeah, well, I certainly would feel a little bit more comfortable talking about the USC cases, in which, for example, with the women's cases, Dr. George Tyndall, who appropriately has been arrested for several counts of sexual abuse, we have several clients that have filed. We filed on behalf of those clients for this case. And he was a gynecologist at the university. Again, one of the, scariest times, right, for a woman to be, finally prepared to go and see a gynecologist for their regular healthcare checkups. And you think someone in the white coat that you can trust them, and not knowing that they're walking into a situation with someone who can take advantage of them. And so, again, another good point for parents to start talking to their children at an early age about what is appropriate and not appropriate even when it comes to having a doctor, even when it comes to having professors and teachers and things of that nature, to just be making sure that they are appropriately educated on, what lines are not supposed to be crossed and when it's appropriate to report.
Yeah, and I think those things are important. I know some, people growing up may not know what is supposed to happen when you get your womanly check exam or whatever, the gynecologist. So help educating and helping that could also help the students, if not or the survivors, recognize some of those things. Now, I want to turn it to you, Rochelle, and ask you: do you plan on changing the law to protect the students, the collegiate students, which is our future of tomorrow?
Well, absolutely expecting some very drastic policy changes and standards and procedures among this school and others for sure, that there can be a streamlined process and more so an expected procedure for reporting, to welcome individuals to report, even when in circumstances that they just feel uncomfortable, so that there is an open line of communications. But absolutely, I think that we definitely have to hold up our institutions and colleges to high standards of care and, expectations of, how they're going to take care of these students and maintain professionalism with, with the students that they're there to teach.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
That definitely is something great to hear from attorneys like yourself that are wanting and willing to make a change in our society, in our communities, and especially with a topic so deep like this, which is sexual abuse. I know it's something that it's an uncomfortable conversation for some and even for some parents, but I feel like now we're 2020, we're in the era of having uncomfortable, healthy conversations so that way we could be a better tomorrow. So now I kind of want to dive deep a little bit on what you mentioned, which is Boy Scouts of America sexual abuse. Tell us a little bit about this case.
Absolutely. So Boy Scouts of America has filed for bankruptcy, and we are in the process of, working through some of the formalities, of course, of what the court will require of the cases. But we're building a docket of cases of individuals and survivors that are coming forward and would like to see justice done for sexual abuse that not only has happened in recent times and in recent years, but even from years and years ago. Unfortunately, the organization has withstood years of, kind of sweeping things under the rug, not being held accountable for sexual abuse and things of that nature. And so we absolutely want to be able to be the voice of those individuals that were harmed by this organization. Again, same, kind of dynamic as in college and collegiate sexual abuse types, where, there is no open platform where reporting is encouraged. And, I think that, unfortunately, these are the types of things that we're seeing from the past. And again, I just have to encourage people and survivors for, taking advantage of the times now that we're, we just have a listening ear. We're ready to hear what they have to say and the complaints that they've had and the experiences that they've had. And, again, Boy Scouts of America is just another example of that.
Yeah, and look, you just kind of mentioned the secret has been kept for a long time. Like this is one of the largest scouting organization with the largest youth organization in the United States. It just boggles my mind to think how long has this secret been kept? I could what? How many years would you say that Boy Scouts of America has been around? This is just crazy to us.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have many clients who haven't said anything for over 20 years. And oftentimes we're the first ones that ever hear about this, or they, shared and reported at that time, and then nothing was done. So yeah, this, you're talking about years and years of, harboring in, that hurt and that shame and oftentimes guilt for, not being able to do more about it.
So, what we're talking about right now is behaviors that happen. And what I mean by behaviors, I'm talking about sexual abuse behaviors that happen between the leaders, the volunteers against young men. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay. And for you,
or part of their scout groups. Yes.
that's crazy. So, for you speaking right now to potentially young men that are watching, how can you get them to be confident in telling their story? Now, everyone is at different journeys of their life on, coming forward. And again, in 2020, we have a listening ear. You just said that. There's so many platforms and or people that have a listening ear and are willing to help. So how can you advise those that may be watching that just don't even know how to say something to even acquire help?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, there's no one way to say what happened. Absolutely would want them to know that they can do it on their terms. They can, decide when they're ready to tell and who they are ready to tell. The other thing that I would encourage, and especially in our firm, I like to think that, I'm an attorney, right? And I'm going to practice in that area of expertise. But as you saw in our last show last month, that we have other experts on our team as well. And, one of them is a licensed social work, is a social worker. We have a mentor survivor, and we have individuals on our team and resources that we can provide in order for those survivors to feel comfortable telling their story at their level when they're ready, to whom they're ready to talk to. So I think that's the most important thing, is just knowing that there is no shame or blame, that they can talk when they're ready, how they're ready, and we won't be offended at it, no matter how they tell their story. We want them to feel comfortable, and it's not about me, it's about them.
And that story may also come in pieces as well, maybe not all complete. Look, it's definitely, it sounds like such a hard thing to do, to uncover wounds that you probably either try to cover, put underneath the rug. So you have a dedicated team that is takes pride in how they gather that information in that story. And some of it may take a little longer than others, but it's a different journey of everyone. Isn't that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody's going to have their own journey. It will affect everyone differently. Some people, for example, have a very flat effect, and you may not notice that they're hurt by it. But asking them the questions is still important, because they can tell you how they feel, even though some days they may not show it. They've, maybe, pushed themselves to kind of hide it and cover it up. So everybody has their own way of how they're going to deal with it. And we're here to help in any way that we can.
Yes, and I definitely want to get to this comment. We have Yvette on the show saying, "Wow, can't believe all this has been going on. Thanks for informing us." There's a lot of people like out there like Yvette that may not know that these case types are even existent, or that this is going on. And so I'm loving that we're using this show today, episode 4, to really just put some of these case types out there so we can inform people. And that way we can understand sometimes some people that may be going through some of this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And now I want to go ahead and switch it over to the next case type that you said, which is general sexual abuse case. So let's talk a little bit about what encompasses general sexual abuse. And your answer may be general, right? But exactly what is, tell us a little bit about this.
I mean, I think that would encompass any other type of sexual abuse. And then just keep in mind, you mentioned the comment of someone who didn't know that, sexual abuse was occurring in all of these areas. It can happen anywhere, absolutely anywhere. It can happen in your home. It can happen anywhere you're put in a position where, you've trusted someone and given access of yourself or your children to someone, it can happen. And so I think the expectation, right, would be that we just need to, make sure that we're protecting ourselves, protecting our kids, and not giving access to individuals that we don't necessarily trust. And so I would say general sexual abuse cases can encompass all of those things. It can encompass several different types. Now, I do want to distinguish criminal from civil. And so when we start talking about a criminal aspect, which is what I used to do, and I've done that in the past, wherein someone has been sexually assaulted and they want a criminal case filed, right? And so in order to do that, you would report what happened to the local agency. So whatever police agency is local to where your incident occurred or where that survivor lives, and they would report it. And my hope would be, right, that agency would investigate that sexual abuse and would file a police report with the local district attorney's office. And so just keep in mind, when you go the criminal route, that it would be, for example, in the state of Texas, it would be the state of Texas versus whomever that perpetrator is. And that survivor would be going to the prosecutor in that particular district attorney's office and getting assistance there, providing the facts and details. And then that perpetrator could potentially be convicted of an offense and have something on their criminal record. Sometimes there's a fine, there could be probation, there could be prison, all, number of things in that scenario. If you're looking at the civil aspect of general sexual abuse cases, you would retain a civil attorney like myself, D. Miller, or another attorney that practices civil law. And sexual abuse, I would call it civil prosecution. It could be a civil, so it's very similar. I could still represent you, but we would go about filing our own case, doing our own investigation, and then we would, assuming that we all have enough facts, details, and evidence, would make a decision about filing a case for monetary damages.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting because, someone like myself, we just hear a case and we don't really know that it might be broken up. But let me ask you this. Could you potentially have both going on at the same time?
Absolutely. You could absolutely have both going on at the same time. So same example that I had earlier with the case with Dr. George Tyndall at the University of Southern California. He has both a civil case going in which plaintiffs are suing for monetary damages, and then also has a criminal case going in which he's been charged by a district attorney's office and has to answer to those criminal charges that he's been charged with.
Wow, and this is great information. I know you're kind of uncovering on the legal's perspective, right, from an attorney side. So do you guys, if there's two cases going on at the same time, do you guys work hand in hand with the attorneys on the civil side, or it's kind of two cases, the survivor kind of has to tell their story probably two different times? How does that work?
So unfortunately, the survivor would typically have to tell their story two times. I can tell you when I have a situation that deals with that and has two different cases going, I do make attempts to try to retain or get as much information and evidence as I can from the client or the survivor that went and filed those charges, and then also would communicate with the prosecutor. But being a former prosecutor, I do understand that there are very fine lines of what you can provide, what information can be shared. It's typically very minimal. It's typically only what is public information. But I do, as a representative of the survivor, would certainly want the prosecutor to know, especially in cases where you want those charges to go forward, that we're here to support those causes of action, that we're here to support those offenses, and to communicate with us when that survivor might be needed in court and otherwise. So I would say I try very hard to work hand in hand when we can. And it just kind of depends on what rules and regulations are in place at the time.
This is great information because, and I ask it, Attorney Rochelle, is because it has to be hard to uncover your story twice and open those wounds up again. And so I just kind of wanted to hear, based on your knowledge and your expertise, how does it work on the both? Which is, it's great to kind of hear that sometimes you guys are willing and work as a team, even though they're two different cases, and sometimes you just may not be able to because of how the parameters are set up on the criminal and on the civil side.
Right. And, you're bringing up a really important point, because I do think that even in past cases and current cases, I do try very hard to make sure that survivors are not having to constantly repeat details if they don't have to. Of course, we warn them. And manage those expectations by letting them know, listen, I'm going to try to gather as much of the details and facts as I possibly can. There are going to be incidents in which I may have to, get more details and ask about something again. But for the most part, I do want them to be able to know that they can tell us and share something with us, that we're going to protect that information, that we're going to listen to that information, and not force them to, because reliving it, because retelling is reliving, and it's draining for them. We're opening up sometimes wounds that haven't been opened for 20 years, or certainly details that they don't want to think about anymore. And we have to kind of, in order for me to help them, I have to get those details. So we're careful, and I do hope that others are mindful of that as well.
I love to hear that you, not just yourself, Attorney Rochelle, but you have a dedicated team that's mindful of that. Because sometimes, whether it happened years ago, you choose not to bring up those memories, or you really put in the recycle bin in your memory box because you don't want to even relive it. So I'm very happy and pleased to hear that you guys are super mindful of that, and you have certain experts on your team to make sure it's a smooth process on the healing and getting them back to whole. We do have another comment here. Yvette again is saying, you are so right. Talking about it helps those victims understand that is no shame on their part, and helping them come forward and put a stop to those perpetrators. Thank you for bringing the subject up. Well said, Yvette. Very well said. I think that's exactly why we're doing this show, because there's a need out there, and we definitely want to uncover that.
Yeah, I agree. And, again, it's so hard for them to be able to work through some of those details that they've tried for years to forget. And, it could be a way of re-victimizing them if we're not careful. And so I do think that, it's important to make sure that when we fact gather, that we're documenting the things, and of course confidentially, but documenting it in a way that we won't have to re-ask all those questions.
Yeah. Now I want to go ahead and switch the subject to another case type, and that is ride share sexual abuse. Okay. Ride share is so prevalent in our world today, 2020. Now we have a lot of ride share options. Not to name any companies in particular, but there's just a lot. So, Attorney Rochelle, tell us, and really, I think this is going to bring a lot of shockers to a lot of people, but tell us about this case type.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think this can often be one of the more dangerous ones. People use ride shares when they're in vulnerable positions. Not always, right? But a lot of times people use ride share applications when they're in vulnerable positions, wherein they may have had too many drinks and they don't think it's safe to drive, or they may not. They may not want to drive alone to a particular location. And so they think, oh, let me use this ride share, and they're completely sober, but wanting to have to be dropped off right in front of their location and have a safe way to get there and get back. The danger in that is that oftentimes there is a perpetrator that is driving you, someone who does not have their best interest at heart, and someone who doesn't necessarily want to make sure or care to make sure that you make it home safely. And so the danger, of course, is that you're in that car alone, may not be able to get out when in need. And oftentimes people are not just sexually abused but also physically abused. Very dangerous, and hope that people are, of course, again, mindful and wise when making their choices, and making sure that these persons have good reviews, before they're getting in those cars in vulnerable positions.
And because you are dealing with some of these case types on sexual abuse in particular for rideshare, what have you experienced? Like, do these drivers have to go through a certain credentials or testing, or could this be, unfortunately, criminals as well that you are trusting and putting your life in their car or property?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, some of them have some background checks, but not in all cases. It's been very thorough. There's not been what I would perceive as a very good process or standard of procedure when it comes to riders that report any type of abuse or issues. Things that you would want to see in a scenario like that if you're ever harmed or assaulted in any way, that you would be able to report to that rideshare company, and then they would be able to do something about it, begin an investigation, put some sort of warning for that particular driver so that someone else coming behind, next, on that rideshare app would have some sort of a notice that this has occurred. Things like that, and just putting in those safety measures for persons, to make sure that we're all protected.
And look, a lot of the things that you keep restating and repeating is standard procedures. They're lacking, whether it's collegiate, rideshare, Boy Scouts. I've heard you already say that numerous times. And that is what we need to make a change in those standard procedures. Or maybe they have them and they weren't well thought out, or maybe they're a little bit old, that they need to be adapted by the times. And, that's something that I'm so glad that you're uncovering this so that we could bring it to the table and make them accountable of some of these things.
Right. And, the trouble here is that, we have now it seems that we've got high expectations, right, of these institutions and commercial platforms, when really this should be the norm. This should be expected. That they are going to welcome reporting, and that they're going to have a process and procedure in place, that it is going to be unbiased, that they are going to encourage individuals to share their experiences, so that we all know, right, that we're in good hands.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of these examples. Now, you've seen, and I know you have to speak on general terms, but what are some of examples there? I mean, women, men, both, some examples of the ride share sexual abuse. I'm pretty sure it's maybe all over the place, and you can uncover of what you've seen and kind of heard.
Sure. So I've certainly seen that it happens all over the country. So there's not any one particular area that I think sees it more than others. Have seen it cross gender lines, for sure. I have seen some of the most drastic and violent sexual abuse cases. I've seen some where individuals are entering the home of the rider. So you definitely, want to be careful when doing ride share and taking the ride directly to your home and you're alone. We've seen physical abuse, very dangerous scenarios of physical abuse as well. So, I do think that precautions absolutely need to be taken when you're using ride share. And there's, no one, coined example that I could give. But it happens. Yes.
Yeah, and look, just kind of hearing you speak, I think having that precaution for an individual is not exposing that you live by yourself, not exposing your direct door if possible. I mean, in apartments or a townhome, stuff like that. This is crazy that I'm kind of hearing some of these details. And I do want to ask, you mentioned even they go into the home, which is on another level crazy to me, Attorney Rochelle. But have you experienced and also seen that some of these behaviors have been done while they're under the influence as well? Could that have happened as well?
It does. It does. And again, that's another part of that vulnerable piece, part of the population on these kinds of cases that I think are in danger because you're not, if you've had some drinks, right? The reason that you would call a ride share is because you believe that you don't have the capacity, the mental capacity to safely drive yourself. And so the hope is that you could get a ride share and be able to make it home safely, even though you're in that vulnerable position. So we absolutely have to take some responsibility, and make sure that we're being as safe as we possibly can. But I implore the rideshare commercial platforms of any kind to put in those measures, and again, those standard procedures and things that we can have some expectations of our drivers to know that we're in a safe car.
Yeah, and I would just definitely give feedback to the viewers because I know, especially, some of my close friends, if someone is under the influence, instead of having them get behind the wheel, they just put them in an Uber. But you put them in an Uber by themselves. That just kind of scares me hearing some of these details. What could potentially happen when they are not even just, mindful of their surroundings or able to because they're under the
Right.
influence?
Right. So some of the things that you could maybe do is make sure that you don't ride alone, or make sure that you're not completely inebriated, and maintaining some control. And then additionally making sure when you have drivers that you can also make sure to look at their reviews and see what types of reviews they have, if you've ever seen any issues like that. But of course, again, we want to make sure that those standard operating procedures are in place with those ride share applications.
Yeah, I think out of this conversation, that's what we want to take away is those measures that are put in place. And I'm going to ask you one last question when it comes to ride share sexual abuse. Have you noticed that certain drivers have either gone off the route and done some of these behaviors as well?
I've seen drivers that have gone off their route, drivers that have implicated their child locks on the back doors where you wouldn't be able to get out without assistance. So be mindful of things like that when you're getting in the back seat of a car, to pay attention, yeah, to those things. But yes, absolutely, very dangerous situations. Absolutely.
So I definitely want, if you guys are watching and definitely taking some note, is all those things to have precaution is super important, especially the route. You can follow along where they're going. And if they notice that, or if you notice that they're going off route, say something. So that way they see that you're being alert and you're not just like, listening to your music in the back seat. I know we get very used to the environments and how things are just normal that we don't really pay attention. And I want us to be a little bit mindful so that these crimes get lessened if we can do something to help you guys out as well. All right, so now I want to switch it over to another important one. We do have two more case types that we want to address, and that is clergy sexual abuse. For those that are watching right now, Attorney Rochelle, explain to us exactly what clergy sexual abuse means.
Sure. So clergy sexual abuse would be any type of abuse that is perpetrated on a survivor by someone, a member of a church, would probably be the simplest way that I could say that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in a Catholic church scenario. It could be in any form. So it could be a pastor, it could be a priest, it could be a minister, anyone within that church system. We would consider that clergy sexual abuse, and we do handle those types of cases as well.
Now, what you talk about in the church, some churches have schooling, some have Bible school, some have, Sunday mass. So we have a huge range from even infants, because some of them have daycare, all the way up to adults. So what age range are you seeing? Are you seeing all?
I think you could see any age range. Again, this is, it's a coin, I would say a very common coined thing about sexual abuse. It could happen to anyone at any age, anywhere. And so again, it's all about educating educating, and making sure that our kids and adults are paying attention to those signs and symptoms, because that's the only way that we're going to recognize it. And then, of course, making sure that we encourage environments of reporting.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Attorney Rochelle, does this case type, clergy of sexual abuse, vary from state to state? I mean, are the laws significantly different? How does it work for whoever we're talking to right now on this show?
Right. So again, you can still have a criminal case out of it and a civil case, depending on the facts and scenarios. And every case type, every case is going to vary based on the law in that particular state. So absolutely, you're going to have to look at what the requirements are for sexual abuse and what the statute of limitations are in that particular state. So yes, it would vary state by state, and that's going to be on all of these case types that we've discussed.
Now, okay, since we're talking about a lot of change, we're talking change on sexual abuse right now, but there's change happening all around us right now. I think this is the year that we're uncovering and getting to the core of things. So, are there laws set up state by state, variation, that are protecting some of the churches, or are the laws protecting potentially some of the survivors?
As somebody, I think that's a tough question. I think that I'd have to go, case by case and kind of make that determination. I certainly think that every state probably has laws that could be revamped and revitalized for survivors. And I have some, strong opinions about that in hopes of protecting survivors more. But if I understand your question, I think that it may depend on the type of case, on whether or not you're going to have those laws in that particular state be supportive of you. And here's another thing that I would certainly want to, encourage any survivor is, don't just assume that you don't have a case. There may be some variations in the law. There may be something that we are aware of that may be coming in the future, some changes in the law. And so, again, definitely wouldn't want you sitting at home, even relying on Google searches and things like that. You call an attorney for sure, to make sure that whether or not you do or don't have a claim.
Yeah, I think that is super great information. We do have another comment from Yvette saying, I'm going to forward and share this awesome, informative podcast with friends, and I know have been molested to be informed of these situations and realize there is a caring law firm where they will be in caring hands also. Definitely agree. I think sharing is key around here. The more we share our knowledge, the more we can really educate and make people mindful of the things that either certain people are going through or certain things that we can probably avoid. So, Yvette, we want to thank you for sharing it. I think that is so important. So that way we can induce some of that change today on some of the prevalent topics that we have going on.
Right. Right.
So, Attorney Rochelle, on clergy, as a sexual abuse attorney, how can it just sounds like there's so many cases? How can you touch all these cases and help all those that could potentially be affected?
And you mean me personally? And it varies on the case type, but I take a lot of pride in making sure that I touch each one and review it and strategize about, how we're going to handle those cases. It's why we have a big team. It's why my teams are growing pretty rapidly, and definitely, always making sure that we have enough personnel to handle all these different case types, and making sure, because here's the huge point to make on, sexual abuse cases, every single case is going to be different, and has to be handled, personally and with detail and, a good strategy and legally thought out. And so we are, just taking care and making sure to do that for sure. And we work as a team. And so I think that's the strategy. I like to think of it kind of as a task force. I think we talked about that on the last show, is just to make sure that we make a good front for all of our survivors.
Definitely, definitely. It sounds like you have a frontline team to help some of these survivors. I do have another comment from Kim. She's saying this is very informative, empowering information. Definitely that. We definitely want to empower those survivors that are potentially watching. We want to empower those family members or friends of those are survivors that are watching as well. We want to help those have a voice. We're in 2020, and this is the time, like Attorney Rochelle said, we have listening ears. So that is where we want to address some of these things. And lastly, I want to uncover, Attorney Rochelle, human trafficking and sexual abuse cases. This is huge. I want you to kind of talk a little bit. We've talked about them in the past episodes, but it is a case type. So tell us a little bit about the human trafficking sexual abuse case type.
Sure. Again, just like all of these case types that we've mentioned, human trafficking can be prevalent in any area. It can happen anywhere. And so, again, you pay attention to those signs and symptoms, those things, the red flags, right, that would let us know that it's going on. And being in tune with the kiddos around us and making sure, again, I just can't say it enough, that we encourage environments of reporting. But yeah, human trafficking is a case type that we handle, and it is dynamic in a sense that sometimes individuals and survivors that are experiencing it or seeing it may not even recognize it as human trafficking. But in a sense, I think the boilerplate of the type that we what I would consider we see most often are individuals that are being sold for sex, and that are being trafficked, and what we would use the term pimp, and having a trafficker that's making money off of that individual. But yeah, unfortunately, this is something that we see in our communities, in our society.
Yeah, and I know some of that terminology that you're speaking about on, certain words that are just not normal to the common viewer. I definitely suggest that you guys go watch our episode 1. We uncover exactly what a pimp signifies, what a John signifies, so that way you can kind of get the lingo and the terminology when it comes to human trafficking. Now, Attorney Rochelle, how common is this? Like, where does the human trafficking sexual abuse cases occur, or what are the commons of it?
Sure. I mean, I think, like I've said, I think that it can happen. It can happen anywhere. It does happen in Texas, more frequently than you could ever think. You will see or could see women and children that are being trafficked. I believe that the governor has a huge campaign and push for education right now in Texas about human trafficking. And so, I would say that it happens very often. And being mindful when you have runaways, children that are in that I would consider in a vulnerable class of individuals that are in and out of trouble, or if they've ever had any access to drugs or drug use, individuals that are, again, like running from home, and maybe bad parent relationships, I would consider in a vulnerable class, because traffickers take advantage of that. Oh, mom and dad, you don't feel like mom and dad love you. I love you. I will take care of you. But then again, always know that even if they're in a vulnerable class, that can still be a victim of trafficking. Even just as, simply as allowing them to use Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook Messenger and things like that, they could very easily be accessed by using those messaging systems and contacted by traffickers, and build relationships with them. And it's not, I would say, as difficult as it had been passed without these instant messaging services, where you had to be kidnapped or things like that. Now it's just access. They're a Zoom call or a Facebook Messenger call away, and it's just access. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty common.
now technology is kind of easy, right? And I was going to ask you, maybe you can shed some light. Is this only on the personal aspect, like to where someone could be taken and done, basically pimped in the streets, or could this also happen in the line of a business or an institution?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it can happen on any platform. It could be a hotel that's being used to traffic girls. It could be, I would say in recent years, not very recent, but in recent years, there was Backpage that was being used. So there are lots of different ways, and commercial platforms are engaged and involved. And so when you start seeing things at a hotel, and you're seeing young girls coming in and out at odd hours, or men, that could be a sign. It could be something, and we certainly would want to report it to the police and make sure that someone is investigating that. And then additionally, if they decide that they want to see if they have a civil case there, to contact an attorney and see if there's a case there.
Wow, that's a lot of information. So for the viewers that are watching right now, how could they recognize, what are some little tidbits that you could say, like report that? So you're seeing something and your question and your mental is kind of not playing tricks with you. You're on the right track. Just when in doubt, report it. What do you advise that we could do to recognize if something's happening in a business around us or even in our backyard?
Right. So you could, another example would be a massage parlor or a brothel of something of that kind, where you're seeing men come and go at odd hours, or if you happen to go to that particular business, oftentimes, people just they want a legitimate massage. They want to have a spa day, and they go in there and they're seeing things like only cash transactions, or condoms and lubricant and things like that. I would say that would be a sure sign that that particular massage parlor is not, acting ethically and within their business guidelines, and that should be reported, absolutely, because you're not going to see those things at a legitimate massage parlor. Other things, even if for just parents that want to pay attention to their children, I certainly would say, if they, have a cell phone, that, if mom and dad are coming and they hurry up and, shut it down, they don't want you to see what's going on, closing their laptops and things like that. I encourage parents, hey, you check those web browsers, check those text messages and things like that. Encourage your kids to talk to you about it, and just, again, have those environments that are just, ripe for discussions and communication and reporting. And that's how we keep each other safe. So yeah, I mean, and then
Yeah, it's a lot. I know we definitely uncovered a lot. So for human trafficking, it could happen in a business. It could be abducted by an individual. It can also happen through applications. So I will definitely, just like Attorney Rochelle said, advise look at your kids' apps. Some of them are masked to where you think it's a game and it's really not. We got to be a little bit more careful because they're getting very creative on the back end. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. They're creative, and they teach our kids to be creative. So they may have an application and they may only use it while they're at school. And then they come home, and before they walk in the door, they may delete that application. And so having some control over when they can download applications and how, and all those things like that, you can password protect it and things like that. So you have to put those measures in place. And of course, there's a very fine line of being the worried and concerned parent, and then one that's just being smart and vigilant. But you absolutely have to be mindful and aware of all the things that are happening to our kids today.
Yeah. Attorney Rochelle, you've definitely shed a lot of light on the case types of sexual abuse. A lot of people just think sexual abuse is exactly, maybe on college level, but we just opened the door to expose to our viewers that it's deeper than that. It's happening everywhere, and there has been certain movements that have brought this to the forefront, from Me Too, Us Too, stuff like that. We want to keep those movements alive so that way we can keep educating our communities. Now, Attorney Rochelle, if you had to leave our viewers with one more last thing, this is the last episode of this series that we're going to see you, the attorney, but we'll have you and other Talk to Me Tuesdays. But if you had to leave our viewers with one last thing, what would you let them know?
Sure. I mean, actually, I have two things, if that's okay.
Yeah.
The first thing is that I would just always encourage that they speak to an attorney. If you think that you have a case, I would implore them and push them to just find out if that's something that they would like to do. And if they're afraid of the court system, an attorney, and it could explain all of that, and the gravity and what that would look like. But I just would push that you find out, because you don't know unless you get that advice. And then the last thing, of course, I've just had this on my heart, and I have shared this maybe even in a past show with you, Madi, is that, COVID-19 is just a really tough time for all of us right now. And, even in the means of us doing this show, we're doing it remotely, which I enjoy and appreciate. But at the same time, I do have lots of concern for those that are in, rough situations, sexual abuse, domestic violence situations in COVID, and they are stuck at home with their abusers. And so I just want to let them know that people are out there to help them, and to help them escape, or to just cope if that's all that they want right now. And so I just encourage them to call and to be willing to reach out to resources as they're needed. And so just know that people are listening and people are ready to help.
Yeah, thank you so much, Attorney Rochelle. You bring up a great point. Also, I want to just add to that, if you are a neighbor or if you see something in your community, being mindful and looking at those maybe red flags, because you can help someone that is in a situation right now in their own home. So you never know how you can help. So we want to remind everyone and those that are watching that you're not alone in your struggles. The beginning stages of healing is to reach out for help. And today we are offering a helping hand to our sexual abuse survivors in the community. Attorney Rochelle Guiton, thank you again for coming on our show, special series, Sexual Abuse, Human Trafficking, and discussing the different case types. Be sure to tune into the series as we conclude with our final episode. You don't want to miss our final episode, which we will be speaking our sexual abuse survivor tells her story. Attorney Rochelle Guiton will continuously educate the community on sexual abuse and human trafficking to continue to introduce change. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in and for sharing this special show, being a part of the conversation by liking and commenting on this video. The more we spread the knowledge, the more likely we are to help someone in need. Until next time, Talk to Me Tuesday with your host, Madi B. Human trafficking is a worldwide epidemic. Awareness will be crucial to saving our communities. The wrath of human trafficking crosses gender lines, ethnicities, and all age groups. Traffickers and abusers want you to feel as though you are alone, hopeless, worthless, but you are fighters. You are strong. You are survivors. You are worth everything. You are not alone. Let us give you a voice. A simple phone call will get you the help that you deserve, the help that you need. We will ensure that we are with you every step of the way. The team of attorneys at D. Miller & Associates, PLLC, is ready to fight for you, to change your life, to change the community, and to change the world. Let us be your voice. Give us a call at 713-850-8600.